We have a solution to climate change that works in years, not decades. It costs less than 2% of the oil and gas industry's annual net income. Much of it pays for itself. We can even see it from space, but we're barely using it. Not because we can't see the problem, but because we haven't built the infrastructure to act on what we're seeing. This is a market failure, and market failures are fixable. In the next 15 minutes, I'm going to show you one of the most under-leveraged opportunities in climate action. And by the time we're done here, you're going to have a choice to make about where you want to be positioned when this market corrects itself. In the time it took you to enjoy your first sip of coffee this morning, about 10 seconds, 18,000 tons of climate warming gases were pumped into the atmosphere. To put that into context, that's the weight equivalent of about 250,000 of me emitted in gas in 10 seconds. What you're looking at here are modeled concentrations of the two most critical climate warming gases, carbon dioxide on your left in orange, and methane on the right in purple. Of these two gases, it's the one on the right that I'm going to focus on today. Methane is responsible for 30% of the rise in global temperatures since the Industrial Revolution. One gas, responsible for 1/3 of all the warming in the last 150 years. Carbon dioxide is the climate threat most people are familiar with, and it's absolutely essential that we address it. It builds up over time, and it lingers in the atmosphere for centuries. The decisions we make about carbon today will be felt by a global population that has yet to be born. Methane is completely different. It only lives in the atmosphere for about 12 years. But while it's up there, it traps heat with over 80 times the intensity of carbon dioxide. It's short-lived and extraordinarily potent, meaning if we cut it, we feel it, fast. Not in 100 years, but in the next decade. Another way to think about it is to imagine the climate like a bathtub. Carbon dioxide is what's been filling it, and that water level keeps rising. There's a second faucet, and that's methane. It's cranked up high, and it's running hot. Turn that faucet down, and the water level stops rising as fast almost immediately. But we do need to turn down both faucets to stop the bathtub from overflowing. One of the main differences between these two gases when it comes to climate action is timing. Carbon dioxide is the long game. Methane is a lever we can pull right now and feel the results within our lifetimes. The methane we emit comes from three main sources: energy production, waste management, and agriculture. This includes things like cattle digesting their food, rice paddies flooded across Asia, landfills decomposing on every continent, wastewater systems, gas pipelines leaking, and coal mines exhaling. The methane problem is everywhere, and the methane opportunity is everywhere too. Strategies exist that could cut methane emissions in half within the next decade. If we act on them enthusiastically, we can slow near-term warming by mid-century. Research published in Science last year put a number on what that's worth. The benefit to cost ratio of methane action, at least 6 to 1. And here's what's striking about that number. 3 of the 5 cost analyses they performed in this research showed a net negative cost for the methane abatement. That means this action could pay for itself through captured gas revenue, decreased waste management costs, and yield improvements in rice farming. In the energy sector, 30% of oil and gas emissions could be eliminated with solutions that pay for themselves and generate revenue. In waste, landfill gas for electricity production, recovered biogas from wastewater systems are proven, deployable, and cost-effective. And in agriculture, Anaerobic digesters for methane management also pay for themselves. The potential for economic returns exists across every sector with technologies that already exist. So why is only 2% of global climate capital going here? I want to start by ruling out some of the obvious answers. It's not technology. We have satellites, we have drones, we have ground sensors. In fact, measurement tools are working better today than they ever have. It's not economics. We just established that the returns are 6-to-1. Political will? Well, that's real, and that's complicated. Will is strong in some places, and it's being dismantled in others. But even where the will is strong and the tools exist, progress is slow. So something deeper must be broken. Every night, all over the globe, facilities like this one are venting and leaking methane into the atmosphere. The satellites can see it, the scientists can measure it, and yet, hardly anybody is doing anything to address it. Here's why methane investment is lacking. Methane is a classic externality. The cost falls on the atmosphere, not on the operator's balance sheet. Markets don't price what they can't measure, and they don't act on what carries no consequence. Fix the gap between measurement and reporting. Create the consequence, and the market will move. That's the thesis. This is what methane looks like from space. In Turkmenistan, satellites identified 2 gas fields leaking methane at a scale that put that country at the top of the global super emitter list. These plumes were not in any emissions report. The only way we know about them is because a satellite happened to pass overhead. In the Permian Basin, measured methane intensities are 6 times more than what is reported. And in California, NASA flew over several composting facilities which are designed to reduce emissions and found large unreported methane plumes bigger than the regulatory reporting thresholds. These examples all illustrate the disparity between measurement and reporting. Measurement, monitoring, reporting, and verification is increasingly recognized as a binding constraint in climate action. Without it, carbon markets price the wrong things. Regulations can't be enforced. And investors can't allocate capital with confidence. The field of MMRV is maturing rapidly in some areas, but in other sectors, it remains essentially pre-scientific. This lack of consistent data prevents a clear market signal, which blocks appropriate investment in climate action. Here's what that looks like. $14 billion a year go towards methane and abatement, but the need is $48 billion. That's a $34 billion gap towards the quickest, cheapest climate solution we have. This is not a climate action failure, it's a market failure. And that is a really important distinction because market failures can be repaired. And we're working on it. I want to take you on a field trip to the Permian Basin, the largest oil and gas producing region in the country, also the nation's worst methane hotspot, and also a fantastic example of where MMRV is generating positive returns, both environmentally and economically. In the Permian Basin, Texas relies on voluntary reporting and permissive regulations to monitor methane. In 2021, New Mexico enacted enforceable regulations that required methane reductions without prescribing how to do that. That flexibility unleashed innovation and investment in infrastructure fixes as simple as tuning a valve or tightening a gasket. The result? Within 3 years, New Mexico captured $150 million worth of gas that would have otherwise been wasted. New Mexico saw over 100% production growth. Texas barely managed 20% in the same time. New Mexico proved that reducing emissions didn't slow production, it accelerated it. This demonstrates the power of MMRV. It activates the market, it changes the political calculus, and it creates accountability where there was none. And now there's a deadline. The European Union's methane regulation goes into effect in less than 8 months. All fossil fuels entering the EU under new contracts will be required to meet the EU's methane standards. Today, only 7% of global gas and crude oil production meets that standard. So this means nearly half of the EU's gas imports could face market exclusion. By now, you may have realized this is not just a climate story. This is a market structure story, and it's unfolding on a fixed timeline. One of the greatest opportunities in methane is the data and reporting and verification standards that make climate action investable. The companies and the investors building MMRV today aren't making a climate bet, they're setting themselves up for early market positioning. Think about what this infrastructure enables. Sustainability-linked bonds that actually track to verified reductions. Carbon markets that are reliable because the numbers are real. Most importantly, this enables the market to put the true cost on not measuring and not measuring accurately. Another thing that MMRV does is make breakthroughs that are happening on the edge of science advance. In 2024, researchers published in Nature that trees are absorbing 25 to 50 million tons of methane a year. That's a quantity comparable to the largest known methane sink on the planet. And it's also a quantity that is not currently being accounted for in carbon markets. I joined forces with one of the researchers on this team to launch Selvaflux, a spin-off company dedicated to building out the reporting and verification infrastructure to quantify the methane sucked up by trees, to make it real, to make it tradable and investable. This addition to carbon markets could add up to 30% more value to climate reforestation projects. The estimated market is in the tens of billions. This is just one example, but the pattern is unfolding across sectors. The standards gap is everywhere, and so is the opportunity. XPRIZE, the organization that turned commercial space flight from science fiction into reality, recognized this. Their next grand challenge is methane. Specifically, the 75% of methane emissions from diffuse sources, like livestock, landfills, and wetlands, for which no MMRV currently exists. I'm excited to share with you that I'm building a coalition to compete for mission methane, not just to boost MMRV, but to act. I'm uniting carbon accountants with experts from oil and gas, waste and agriculture, to implement proven solutions, to discover new ones, and to build out the infrastructure that we need to make it all investable. When it comes to methane, the money is on the table right now. Methane is odorless. Methane is colorless. Methane is invisible to the quantification methods we relied on for decades, all while we estimated instead of measuring and believed that the numbers were close enough. But the numbers weren't close. Today, we have over 25 satellites orbiting the Earth and measuring methane plumes. That European Union methane regulation goes into effect in less than a year. And just 10 days ago, the day before I had to turn in these slides, scientists put out a call for a global methane observation system. There's a new innovation economy forming around this problem. and the founders of this market are choosing themselves today. Join me.